Mr. Dean Hunt. Thanks, Dean. Thanks.
Please, continue. Continue, don't stop. That's strokes my fragile ego for the morning, so I appreciate that. We have the handout music. I don't have any handouts. It's just the greatest thing I've ever heard. That's more than enough of that, actually. I'm kind of annoyed. I've got an issue with Jason, actually. I planned to do 21 minutes of Lady Gaga, Michael Jackson, and dinosaur chicken music here today in the style of the Chipmunks, and that's kind of screwed now, so thanks, Jason. Can't follow that. So instead, I'm going to tell you a few stories. 4 in particular, very specific stories that I hope you'll learn a lot from. One is a very strange story from something my dad did when I was 10 years old. This is already sounding like therapy. My dad did something really weird in a McDonald's when I was 10 years old, and it blew my mind, so I'll share that with you. I'm going to share a story, a request that I made to Jimmy Fallon that actually hit the newspapers, and what you can learn from that. A weird insecurity that a bull has. Trust me, it's a weird one. And then 4 guys, regular guys, who set a goal to play basketball with the president. Did they do it? Did they not? Who knows? Kind of blown that reveal there in the photo. But the theme of today's presentation is put your hand up if you've heard people say, hey, if you want to outdo your competition, if you want to be successful in this life, you have to work your ass off. You have to work hard. We've all heard that, right? You have to outwork your competition. You have to bleed from your eyeballs. You have to get carpal tunnel in your wrist like I have had. This is what we're told, and I've nothing against working hard. I absolutely agree with that, but it's 2012. Let's be realistic. If your plan, your game plan to outdo your competition is to work harder than they do, I think that's a little bit flawed. It's not realistic. It's not healthy. I don't think that's a smart strategy. It's 2012. The US is already officially the most overworked country on the planet. We're already working hard. We're already dialed to 11. How much further can we go? You know, who are these people who aren't working hard? Because I've not met many of them. So let's just, as a quick poll, be brutally honest. If you lie, remember, a baby unicorn dies. I know we all know that, but I need to reinforce that. So put your hands up for the sake of the baby unicorns. If you work at least 40 hours a week, be honest. Anyone 50 or more? Be honest. 60? My goodness. Okay, so we're clearly all working our ass off, so I don't think the advice of work harder is really healthy or realistic these days. If you're curious, by the way, the average US worker works 179 hours more even than Japanese workers, 299 hours per year more than British. Guilty. And a whopping 499 hours more than the French, so God knows what they're up to, but it's a whole lot of hours. That's a lot of Downton Abbey there, Chris, that you could watch in 499 hours. So I don't believe it's how much work you do. It sounds good. It's nice for people to come on stage and say, yeah, work hard. Yeah, get up at 6 a.m., all that. Sounds great. I don't think it's realistic these days. I believe if you want to be successful, you need to do work outside of your comfort zone. And it's not how much work you got done that day, it's how much fear you got done that day. That's what's going to, if you look at anyone, Tiger Woods, Richard Branson, Bill Gates, yes, they work their ass off, but they also do things that terrify most people, and probably terrify themselves, but they did it anyway. That said, pushing your comfort zone is not easy. It's terrifying by definition, so I'm going to give you a few stories and a few yarns and a few tips and a few hacks to help you. In the world of bullfighting, I'm not a fan of bullfighting, but I did live in Spain for 7 years. They have a word called querencia. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but querencia is an imaginary spot that the bull, when under pressure, returns to that exact tiny spot in the bull ring every single time. And the more the pressure increases, the quicker it goes there and the longer it stays there. This makes the bull incredibly predictable, makes it incredibly vulnerable, and we all know how that story ends. So humans can be the same. When we get into work, we have to do a big sales call, or we're trying to do a big business deal, or we want to take our business to the next level. And it's the voices in our head kick in, and we return to our querencia. And we go and check Facebook, we check email, we do anything but the scary things we should be doing. Hopefully I'm not alone in this feeling. Has anyone kind of been there? You just return back to your querencia instead of doing the scary things that deep down you know will grow your business. I've developed a system, and I know this is being recorded, but NASA tried to buy this system off me. That's not true, but sounds awesome. Hi, Mum. I call it the ASK system. I'm wearing a suit, so I figured I should go corporate and create like a little letter-based learning for you. ASK system, it's genius. It is extremely complex. No, it isn't. It's the most simple thing in the world, but it works. You simply ask. ASK. If you do not ask, you don't get. My dad told me this as a kid over and over again. He didn't tell me about the birds and the bees and how to shave. That's why I've got this terrible kind of weird half-beard thing going on here. He didn't tell me any of that useful stuff. He just said over and over again to my brother and I, Dean, if you don't ask, you don't get. And he was living proof of that. When I was 10 years old, we were in McDonald's, and we had a couple of Happy Meals, me and my brother, and my dad said he haggled with the person at McDonald's and got 20% off. If there's one place on the planet you would expect not to get a discount, it's McDonald's. I mean, clearly everyone's trained, this is the prices, this is the way there's no room for negotiation. Yet my dad got outside of his comfort zone and he asked for 20% off, and somehow he got it. I have no idea how he did it. And I thought that was a bit weird. It's not even like he needed the discounts. He didn't need the savings. He still does it now, and he drives a Mercedes, a very successful guy. But I learned later in life, he's not doing it for the 20% off. He's training himself to get outside of his comfort zone so that he can then take that experience and go and do a big business deal. He's training himself every single day. Here's the thing. Write this down, tweet it, tattoo it on your elbow, whatever it takes. If you don't ask, then it's an automatic no. If you don't ask, it's an automatic no. So what's the worst that can happen? And you might get 20% off in McDonald's. Speaking of don't ask, don't get, can we turn the fog off? Thank you. This is normally where I do the Madonna routine, and they know that, but again, Jason's outdone me there. So back in 2009, I don't know if you can see this. It doesn't matter if you can't read it. I'll summarize. Business Insider website did this feature entitled, Who's Jimmy Fallon Following on Twitter? Do we all know who Jimmy Fallon is? For those not living in the US like myself, big A-list celebrity, talk show host, Saturday Night Live, uber celebrity, basically. And this was a couple of weeks before he took over the Late Show, so really busy. And here the article is basically talking about the 59 people that Jimmy Fallon was following in early 2009. And this was just as Twitter was taking off. And it was, Oprah Winfrey, CNBC, Palm, and little old me. In fact, here I am with one of my experimental Twitter accounts, DeanHunt08. As a prize, I'll give away one of Andrew's books if you can guess what year I created the Dean-Hunt08 Twitter account in. 08, well done. Andrew, book over there later. This was like my experimental Twitter account. It had killer bunnies and all sorts of nonsense on it, and I would experiment and I would push my comfort zone. With that Twitter account, I sent a private message to Jimmy Fallon because it was 1 week before my first ever on-stage speaking gig. There was 300 people. It was on a $2,000 DVD, and I was petrified. So I thought, hey, Jimmy Fallon's good at this speaking stuff. I'll send him a private message and see if he can write some material for me. If you don't ask, you don't get. So I sent him a private message, and he wrote an opening joke for me, amazingly, and I wimped out and didn't use it on stage because the one thing I learned that day is that Jimmy Fallon has been studying comedy for many years, and the routine he wrote for me was way beyond my first ever stage speaking chops. But the lesson I took from that is if you don't ask, you don't get. I could think of 1,000 reasons, even now, why asking Jimmy Fallon to write material for me the week before he launches The Late Show is the worst idea in the world. I can think of we can talk about it over lunch. I can reel off, machine gun style, 1,000 reasons why that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But I asked. No harm was done. He helped me out, and that was great. And so Business Insider said, Palm, Olivia Nunn, Dean Hunt, PR guy. Oh, I'm not a PR guy, never was, but they just assumed I was his PR guy. So if you don't ask, you don't get. This is another story that I should probably tell my therapist. I was consulting with a big company last summer and helping them take their business to the next level. That's what I do. And my wife decided to come along because their headquarters were near the beach. And she was strolling down the beach while I was doing my thing. And a relatively old guy, clearly very successful, very wealthy, came up to my wife. This is sounding like a police statement already. Came up to my wife, and they started chatting, and she mentioned that I was consulting with a big company and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that he owned numerous companies. He had hundreds of employees and made millions of dollars every single year. And they got chatting, and he said, hey, give your husband some advice. I've probably employed 900 people, and I do the interviews myself. And out of those 900 people, less than 30 or 40 have actually asked me for the job. And he's like, I have a rule now. If you don't ask me for the job in the interview, you're not getting it. I don't care how qualified you are. So we've got to remember, if you don't ask, it's an automatic no. Let's all get high. Who's up for that? I'm only joking. I'm a good boy. Aim high. There's much less competition at the top. If you fall into your querencia and do what everyone else, all your competitors are doing, the other 99%, there's a lot of competition at the mediocre level. Aim high. Take the difficult path, and you'll find it's actually the easier path because no one else has the balls to do it. Tweet that. Don't tweet, Dean says, let's get high. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. Nelson Mandela, probably heard of that young man. Nelson Mandela says it always seems impossible until it's done. The light bulb. To walk into a room, to flick a switch and have light. Imagine how insane that must have sounded for all those years. It always seems impossible until it's done. You will have 100 reasons why you shouldn't make that sales call or approach that CEO or do that business partnership or put yourself out there on video or get on stage and do Michael Jackson. Whatever it is, you're going to have 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't. And that's probably an indicator that you should. Speaking on stage, the only reason I started to do that back in 2009 was because it was the thing that terrified me the most. That's the only reason I did it. I turned down 60 or 70 speaking gigs in the couple of years prior to that because I was too scared. It was too out of my comfort zone. I only did it to push my comfort zone. A lot of my clients these days, my students, are using things like webinars to sell their products, to sell their services, and they're doing phenomenally well. And I have a great reputation in the world of webinars. I help a lot of big business owners with their webinars and their webinar strategies, and people think that I just love the technology or it suits my style or something like that. That's nonsense. I only recommend webinars because most people are too afraid to present. So again, if you aim high, do the things that your competition are afraid of doing, you have a huge advantage. Yes, it's nice to say outwork them, but outfear them. That's the biggest advantage you can get. And now my clients, my students, myself, we're selling 10 times often more than 10 times what we used to sell doing the mediocre methods, doing what everyone else does, doing our querencia models. We're now selling 10 times as much simply because we have less competition. So did these 4 guys, they're now known as the Buried Life. 4 guys got together, they made an MTV show. They were flat broke. They didn't really have any careers or any skills or any assets. They didn't have a TV show. They got together and they made a list. What are the 100 most ambitious things we can try and do for the rest of our lives? And one of them was to have a show on MTV. The other was to play basketball with the current president. They had other things. Let's get on the Oprah Winfrey show. Let's gate crash the Playboy Mansion. Let's donate $300,000 to charity and reunite a long-lost father and son. They did all of that. They now have a show on MTV called The Buried Life, and they've done all these things. Absolutely amazing. And they recently spoke about how they did these impossible-sounding things, and they really fit into how I believe we should be working as well. So I'm going to share some of their tips with you today, if that's cool. Is that good? Awesome. So tip number 1, really think about and write down what it is that you want to do. Really think about it. Make sure it's not your society telling you should do that, or friends, or what other people are doing. Think about what you want to do and write it down. It's a very simple step, but until it's written down, it's not real. Write down your options. How can I achieve this? How can I get to $1 million in sales? How can I do this big business partnership? How can I do comedy with Jimmy Fallon? Whatever your goals are, write down your options and your paths, and then whichever of those options terrifies you the most, do that. Money is where the fear is. Fear is your indicator. It's not something to move away from and flinch. It's something to move towards. And it's taken me a lot of years to figure that out. Step number 2, talk about it. Jason said, sing it in the hallways is how he worded this, which was fantastic. Talk about it. Put out your goals. Tell everyone. These guys would get in cabs and say, hey, we want to do an MTV show. We want to play basketball with the president. They'd tell everyone. And a lot of their goals came about because it was a friend of a family or an uncle of a neighbor or something like that. So put it out there, show your passion, and talk about it. In today's world of social media, you've no idea who your friends are connected to. So put yourself out there and talk about it. Be persistent. One of my favorite things that these guys said is this quote here. They said, we've come to learn that no simply means not now. We've come to learn that no simply means not now. So how many times have you tried to do a sales call or tried to make a sale or do a joint venture deal or whatever it is in your business and you've heard no? That doesn't mean that's gone forever. It just means not now. So be persistent. Keep going back. Is this the handout music? I like it. You're probably thinking, who's this guy with a weird accent to give us advice? Well, firstly, that's very offensive. Secondly, don't just take my word for it. Take SpongeBob SquarePants. If he says it, it must be true, and he says don't stop believing, so I don't think you can take that to the bank, cash that. Step 4, be ballsy. Don't stop believing. The level of competition is highest for realistic goals. So be ballsy. If you're going to do the easy path, do the easy things, I'm going to write an email instead of picking up the phone because that scares me a little bit. That's what all your competition are doing. And that email is going to get drowned amidst the hundreds of other people doing the exact same things. So the ballsy option, the big option, the ambitious, the scary option is actually the easiest path. If you think about it like a tree with lots of fruit in it, and we've got a lot of monkeys in the tree getting their fruit on, if there's a lot of fruit at the bottom where the branches are thick, that's going to be the easiest. That's literally the low-hanging fruit. But if you've got 1,000 monkeys trying to get those apples, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be a battle. But if the monkey goes right to the top where there's thin branches, it might seem daunting, it might seem scary, but they're going to have no competition and it's going to be easier. So, as the photo reveals, they did get to play basketball with the president, and they said here, playing basketball with the president was on our list because it was literally the most unattainable goal we could think of. It was literally the most unrealistic, impossible thing they could think of, and they did it. And this was just 4 kids, no advantages. They didn't have a show or anything at the time. They had no cash, and they managed to do it. So think about that. What are the things that right now you're telling yourself, hey, I would love to do this? Perhaps you're even imagining in your head, you're playing a movie. Yeah, this would be fantastic. This would change my life. This would grow my business. And then the little voices come in and they give you 1,000 reasons why that won't work. Do it anyway. If you don't ask, you don't get. And I'm all for working hard. I don't think we're in the era of how much work you do in a day. I think it's how much fear you get done in a day. And those are the things that are really going to inspire you. They're going to give you some incredible stories, and they're going to take your business to the next level. So thank you. Appreciate it.